Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue with our previews for each and every NFL division during the Krull Sports Podcast Preview Pod. And the next division we will be going over as we jump to the NFC is the NFC West. And I think what makes the NFC West so good, and I would consider this to be the best division in all of football, is that I think you can make an argument for legitimately any one of the four teams in this division to win it. The Rams, playoff team last year. Seahawks won the division last year. 49ers returned a majority of the core that 2 years ago actually was able to get this team to a Super Bowl and 1 or 2 plays away from actually winning that Super Bowl. And then the Arizona Cardinals, who last year got off to just a phenomenal start. They faltered down the stretch, and they have a very dynamic young quarterback in Kyler Murray that we all know can make plays. So I think that's what makes this NFC West so interesting and what also makes it the best division in football. You could literally make a case for any one of the four teams in this division to win it. And the team that I am going to be predicting to win the NFC West with a record of 12-5 is the Los Angeles Rams. And this was super tough for me. I think that there are many teams in this division. Once again, you could make a case to win it, but I'm picking the Rams. And I'll start off by saying this. Sean McVay is someone that is not appreciated enough. The fact that he has came into the NFL and after 4 years, you guys remember what the Rams looked like when Jeff Fisher was their head coach and Jared Goff was their starting quarterback for that 1 year? They just looked like the most boring, the most blah team in the NFL. And they bring in Sean McVay, who instantly, in his first year, leads the Rams to an NFC West title and is the new next big thing in terms of coaching in the NFL. And the rest of the NFL has really followed suit to everything that Sean McVay has been doing, because how many guys have been hired across the league as head coaches who are quote-unquote McVay guys, between LaFleur and Zach Taylor. So many more have been running this Sean McVay style, fast-paced tempo offense, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And all he has done has win since he's gotten to the NFL. Like, he got to a Super Bowl with Jared Goff as his starting quarterback. And last year, he went into Seattle in a road playoff game with a combination of an injured Jared Goff and John Wofford and won that playoff game. And I think last year in the game against Green Bay, Lambeau Field in the playoffs, which the Rams lost, it finally hit Sean McVay. I need a better quarterback. No matter how good of a coach that I am, if I want to go up and defeat guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady in a road playoff game, I have to improve at the quarterback position, because I give Sean McVay, Les Snead, their GM, and the Rams a lot of credit. They got Matthew Stafford, and I totally understand. Matthew Stafford didn't have the perfect career in Detroit. For a player that is as talented as he is, the fact that he didn't even win a playoff game in Detroit is super disappointing. But at the same time, Detroit is literally football purgatory. I consider the Lions to be the biggest laughingstock organization in the NFL. That is a place where football careers usually go to die. Just as Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson or Matthew Stafford, legends and really good players like that, where in Detroit, they just could not get the job done and their team couldn't win games. I consider Matthew Stafford going from a place like Detroit, which is, once again, football purgatory, literally the worst possible position for a starting quarterback to go to Los Angeles, where Sean McVay had Jared Goff. And look, we'll get to the Lions in a little bit. I think Jared Goff is an okay quarterback. I think sometimes he gets a little too much hate. People treat him like Mitch Trubisky or Nathan Peterman. Like, he's not that, but he is not good unless you give him literally everything. A good running game, a good offensive line, good receivers, and an elite coach like Sean McVay. I think you're giving that all now to Matthew Stafford, and that is going to translate in some victories. And I do think the Rams are my pick to win the NFC West. I'm a big fan of this defense as well. Not many other defenses in the league have two players like Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey that could change and impact and wreck a game as much as they can. And I think their star power will continue. Jordan Fuller is one of the more underrated players in the NFL, safety, former Ohio State Buckeye. In a short time in the league, he has already been named a captain. He is one of their starting safeties. I think he's a big-time player. I'm also a huge fan of guys like Ashawn Robinson and Leonard Floyd, guys they brought in looking to improve the defense. And the Rams have gotten a lot of slack over the last couple of years, right? As a team that is going all in. Sean McVay traded draft picks for Jalen Ramsey, and he traded a first-round draft pick for Matthew Stafford. The Rams do not have many draft picks coming up over the next couple of years. They really do believe that having an impact player on their roster is more valuable than a first-round pick, and I don't necessarily blame them. The thing is, you just have to take advantage of that window, and Sean McVay said, I wouldn't be able to do that with Jared Goff as my starting quarterback, so I'll just go get Matthew Stafford. The other thing I'll say about the Rams is I do think the Cam Akers injury hurts. I think this was a guy who I consider to be a breakout candidate, to be one of the best running backs in the NFL. Every time Sean McVay and the Rams have had a winning, successful season, they've been able to run the ball. They bring in Sony Michel in a trade from the New England Patriots to go along with Darrell Henderson and rookie Jake Funk in that backfield. So we'll see if that's enough. I think the lack of Cam Akers could be a concern for the Rams, but I do think Michel or Darrell Henderson is good enough to at least pick up somewhat of the slack. I really like Matthew Stafford. Right now, the Rams in Vegas, their over-under is 10.5. I will predict them to go over that number to win the division. They are actually a slight underdog. The Niners have leaped the Rams as the favorite to win the NFC West. Right now, the Niners plus 155, the Rams plus 175. Speaking of the Niners, let's get right into them, as they are my pick to finish second place in the NFC West with a record of 11-6. And I'll start off by saying this. I understand that a lot of people don't like Kyle Shanahan due to his poor play calling in past Super Bowls. That's nonsense. Because in Atlanta, we've seen what the Falcons have been like since he's left. They haven't been good, and Dan Quinn wasn't really able to win any football games without Kyle Shanahan, and we know what happened to that offense. It has really regressed. We also look at that Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that game was just a result of Patrick Mahomes being the best player on the planet, and quite frankly, there was nothing Kyle Shanahan and company could have done about it. And over the past couple regular seasons, what this guy has been able to do has been phenomenal. Last year, the 49ers were the most injured team in the NFL, and they had the most COVID outbreaks in the NFL. You guys remember that Thursday night game against the Green Bay Packers that probably, to be honest with you, shouldn't even have been played, and all of a sudden, you turn around, the Packers are just dropping dime after dime after dime, Aaron Rodgers was, and blowing out the 49ers. They literally didn't have any players in that game, and then still they rebound after getting kicked out of the county of Santa Clara. They got kicked out because of COVID policies. These 49ers couldn't even live in their own house. They had to play in Arizona, and they still were able to pull off some big-time victories to end their season, including ruining their division rivals' Arizona Cardinals playoff chances in a game where C.J. Beathard beat Kyler Murray straight up in Arizona. That is all Kyle Shanahan right there. And I think for the most part, he did a really good job last year. I look at the talent on this team. They're going to go with the two quarterback set. It's looking like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be that primary number one starter with Trey Lance backing him up, but he will get some reps throughout the game. And I think this works because when it comes to Trey Lance, I'll say this. I think there's a really good chance that when it's all said and done, Trey Lance is the best quarterback in this class. And a lot of it just has to do with situation. I totally understand Trey Lance is very raw. He has only played one real college football game in the last 2 years. And if you're a 49er fan, I totally get that as a slight concern. But at the same time, if you walk into 49ers practice these days and you just compare Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance and their size and their arm and their real physical attributes, it would be pretty clear that Trey Lance is the better player. But Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy who is so experienced in this offense. He knows how to win football games as long as he is healthy. So Kyle Shanahan decided to give Jimmy G the job. Trey Lance probably just wasn't 100% ready at this point. Fine. But I will say, I do think if the 49ers want to win a Super Bowl, and maybe if they want to win this NFC West, and I think they have a very good chance to do that, having Trey Lance under center might just be the best way to go by week 7 or week 8. During that time, even if Jimmy Garoppolo is winning games and Trey Lance in practice is showing you that he just has more and more control of the offense and that he could look like a big-time player, I would have no problem with Kyle Shanahan pulling the plug from Jimmy G and going with Trey. I think at this point in Jimmy G's career, we know what he is. I think he's a guy that when he is put in the proper situation, he could be a decent quarterback, but at the same time, he is not a guy I look at, especially with the injury history and concerns, that I'll just say, okay, I think he could put the team on his back and the team could win a game because of his performance. He needs to show me a little bit more if he wants to be taken that seriously as like an elite NFL quarterback. And I think the 49ers drafted Trey Lance for a reason. I'm really high on him. I think he's going to be a really good player. A couple names on the 49ers defense I wanted to throw at you. One concern for this team is the loss of now Jets head coach Robert Saleh, one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. They will be elevating DeMeco Ryans, their linebacker coach, to now run this unit. And I will say, I think that's a good hire. I think DeMeco Ryans is going to have this defense playing at a very high level, and personnel has a lot to do with it. Nick Bosa obviously got hurt last year, one of the better natural pass rushers in the league. I think him being back and ready to go for this 49er team will be a big-time difference. Him getting to the quarterback. I'll give you another name as a possible breakout player on the defensive line, former first-round pick out of the University of South Carolina, Javon Kinlaw. I'm a huge fan of his. He could get to the quarterback, and I think him and Bosa will be just a deadly combination. Fred Warner is one of the better linebackers in the league. I just love this team. I love their offense. I love their defense. I have them finishing one game behind of the Rams, but the 49ers have actually played the Rams really well over the past couple of years. Jared Goff has struggled against this 49er defense. I'll be curious to see when these two teams meet up what Matthew Stafford plans on doing against such a good unit, and if him at quarterback will be a difference. So San Francisco, their over-under right now in Vegas stands at 10.5. I will take the over there. I have them winning 11 games, and to win the division, they are plus 155, just slight favorites over the Rams. Now, the team that I'm going to predict to come in third place, but before you freak out, Seahawks fans, I do have your team finishing with a winning record. 10-7 will be my pick for Seattle. And I will admit, Seattle has been a team that I've gone back and forth on throughout this offseason because I saw everything that happened last year, and I'll admit, I think Seattle, you can make the argument last year, was actually one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL. Russell Wilson, we all know how talented of a quarterback he is, and one thing I can't deny is ever since Pete Carroll has gotten to Seattle, like the Seahawks have been able to win games. So they deserve credit for that. That is a great head coach combination. But the fact was, their defense was terrible for the first 10, 11 weeks of last year. And once they got Carlos Dunlap, they actually did a much better job stepping up, winning some games, had an easy schedule. But they were actually winning because of that defense. They weren't winning because of Russell Wilson. And the one time in that playoff game against the Rams where Seattle needed Russell to step up and make a play the most, he just was not able to get the job done. And that is super concerning. Obviously, you combine that with all of the trade speculations that went on during the offseason. Russell Wilson informally requesting a trade, saying, I want to be a Seahawk for life, but if I do get traded, these are the teams I want to go to, That was just stupid. I don't think Russell Wilson was ever seriously considering asking for a trade, but at the same time, I do think the Seahawks need to do a better job around him. Like, Pete Carroll's a great coach, but there are many times where I'm out here watching this team and saying, like, wow, they just need to be much more modern on the offensive side of the ball. They need to get DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett more involved. I look at this team. Their offensive line is much better. They bring in Gabe Jackson from the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that's going to be a huge help. I think their defense should hopefully keep on getting better. I like Benson Mayowa as a young pass rusher. They also obviously bring back Jamal Adams, all the contract disputes that went on over the offseason. Seattle also had some issues with Dwayne Brown and his contract extension situation. They got both of those guys locked up. I like Seattle as a team that is a playoff team. I think they'll win a lot of games. I have them at 10-7. I just don't love their coaching, although it's very good, as much as the Rams and the 49ers, and I think the Rams and the 49ers have just much more complete rosters. At the same time, though, I do think Seattle is going to be a legitimate factor playing in a tough NFC West. I will have them finishing with a record of 10-7. Finally, the team that I have coming in last place in the NFC West, and this is actually going to be one of my more disappointing teams in the NFL this season, it is the Arizona Cardinals. And right now, the Cardinals over-under win total is 8.5. I will take the under there. They are plus 500 to win the NFC West. And it's funny because last year at this time, I was actually the opposite on the Arizona Cardinals. I predicted Arizona to be a playoff team last season, and I was really high on Kyler Murray, and I still am. The problem is I'm just not a Cliff Kingsbury guy, and I don't love this team's offseason. Cliff Kingsbury has been a guy who, since he's been a head football coach, he hasn't really been able to win games. Like, he had Patrick Mahomes as his starting quarterback at Texas Tech and was putting together like consistent 6-6, 5-7 seasons. I get you're a good offensive mind that's very creative, and I actually think in Cliff's first year in Arizona, he was actually pretty solid. He did a good job, much better than I could have ever expected, but last year, that changed. There were many times where I would watch Arizona Cardinal games, and whether it was the play calling, whether it was just the clock management, I would be asking myself, what is this guy doing? Does he have any idea how to manage a clock? And when you combine that with Arizona, their team is good. But let me say something about Kyler Murray. He's a very talented quarterback. He has all the natural ability in the world. He is a running quarterback that can make plays. But I'll admit, whether he was hurt or not, he regressed last year. And he was on the field for those last 6 games, and the Arizona Cardinals really just fell apart. Look at Arizona's schedule last year. They needed one more win to get into the playoffs, but got beat out by the Mitch Trubisky, Matt Nagy-led Chicago Bears. Arizona lost a game to Detroit at home last year. Arizona lost a game against Carolina where they didn't show up. They gave up 31 points to Teddy Bridgewater. Then the last 2 weeks of the season, they're out here losing games to CJ Beathard and John Wofford. Back-to-back games that could have gotten you in the playoffs, and you could not get the job done. The Cardinals fell apart last season. It was an absolute disaster. I don't trust their head coach, and I don't love their offseason. Bringing in guys like J.J. Watt and A.J. Green. Not only did they bring in those guys, but they overpaid for them. They gave them so much money where they had no choice really but to go to Arizona. And from an on-the-field perspective, to be honest with you guys, I'm just not really sure how big of an impact those guys are going to make. Isaiah Simmons had a disappointing rookie season. You hope that he could get better. I'm just not too high on this Arizona Cardinal team right now. I think their offensive line is not great. They did bring in Rodney Hudson from the Raiders, solid move, but I don't know if he's going to be able to make just that big of an impact by himself. I look at this defense. Yeah, they have Chandler Jones. Yeah, they have Budda Baker, but I don't look at this defense as a unit that is top 10 or top 12. They're just an average unit to me. Once Chandler Jones got hurt last year, they really declined, and obviously you get why. But I just think at this point in his career, I don't know what Chandler Jones is. I don't know if you can necessarily count on him to be an elite pass rusher for a really good team. You combine Cliff Kingsbury, the terrible offseason, and the tough NFC West, combined with a quarterback who I think has a lot to prove. As much as I love Kyler Murray and his physical ability, he really regressed last year in those last 6 games. Whether he was injured or not, he was on the field. I expected him to play better, and I think he does have a lot to prove this year. Arizona is the one team in the NFC West I'm not particularly high on. I have them finishing with a record of 6-11. So, to round out my predictions in the NFC West, I will have 3 playoff teams from this division making it. I will have the Rams winning the division with a record of 12-5. I will have the Niners finishing in second as a wild card with a record of 11-6. I'll give Seattle a playoff spot. Second wild card with a record of 10-7. And then the Arizona Cardinals I have finishing in fourth with a record of 6-11. That is the NFC West.